Hello everyone on this beautiful summer's day. My name is Alex Mills. I'm the head of client partnerships at Quantcast. For those that are unfamiliar with us, Quantcast is an omni-channel DSP powered by the world's largest live online behavioral data set. And today I'm really excited to discuss omni-channel marketing and how you can get the most out of your campaigns. The crucial thing to grasp is that your audiences are already engaging across multiple channels. Today, you might have woken up to your digital radio, had a look at the news on your phone, listened to a podcast on your commute here. Everyone is engaging across these devices and channels. And so the challenge is to be present in the right place at the right time and with the right message. If we dig into the numbers, according to eMarketer, CTV users account for more than 2/3 of the UK population now. A massive 60% of total media time is spent on digital media. And let's not forget mobile, where more than half of daily media consumption now comes via smartphone. It's also important to notice a really big shift. While social media remains a key part of many people's strategies, it's actually experiencing a decline for the first time in 12 years. It's hitting a saturation point. So to effectively reach your customers, it's essential to invest strategically across this diverse range of touch points. The key takeaway here is that a true omni-channel strategy, it's important to test all of these channels, identify what's working, and then optimize your spending for maximum impact. There's also another consideration, and that's attention. While people are spending less time on social media, the quality of engagement is also different. According to an attention vendor, social video is actually less engaging than video on the open web. Consumers are most engaged with video on streaming devices, followed by online video. So the open internet is really capturing more attention than social, and that's where advertisers need to invest their marketing budgets proportionally. Now, when it comes to planning an omnichannel strategy, there's often not one data set that applies to targeting across all of these different channels. The reality is the systems we use for planning are often completely separate from those used for buying, and then again separate for optimization and measurement. And this creates a major challenge. Marketers are left trying to piece together data from different sources, often translating between disparate data sets of metrics. It's time consuming, it's error prone, and frankly can be a really frustrating process. It makes it incredibly difficult to track exactly where errors might be occurring, and more importantly, we risk losing sight of the actual audience's true intentions. So this disconnect leads to inefficiency and often missed opportunities. What we really need is data continuity. We need a system where the data gathered during the planning phase seamlessly carries through to activation and measurement. We need to be able to use the same consistent data across all channels, and this allows us to truly understand our audience's journey, optimize frequency, allocate budget strategically, and ultimately deliver better business outcomes. Most importantly, it enables us to provide a seamless and meaningful brand experience for the consumer. Ultimately, it boils down to having consistent data and a clear understanding of where our audience is most engaged and where their attention truly lies across channels. Now, there's also advertisers today have a wealth of data beyond just the old-fashioned cookie. But let's think about our own experience for a minute. How many times has an ad followed you around the internet to the point where you actually no longer want that product anymore? The key today is to understand, instead of just relying on a single data point like a cookie, we have vast amounts of data available. So it would be a mistake to just focus on one. All of these signals are valuable individually, but when combined, they provide richer context and deliver far more relevant and better performing campaigns. We need to understand each person's unique journey and integrate all of these different signals. And crucially, we want to be able to recognize when someone has made a purchase and then, of course, stop showing them the ads. It's about using all the data available smartly to create more personalized and more respectful experiences. With all these signals, it's crucial to leverage real-time data for effective targeting. So if we take this Mazda example, they utilize both third-party audience segments and then they use Quantcast first-party audiences. What we saw with Quantcast in-market audiences was a 19% awareness lift, whilst affinity audiences, they achieved 17%. And when you compare this to a standard Oracle segment, or third-party segment, we saw 0% awareness lift. So you can really see the power of strategically using audience targeting, using fresh, real-time data. And these results really underscore the importance of using diverse and relevant audience signals to achieve tangible and significant impact. What we also have to understand is that no consumer journey to purchase is the same. So take my twin girls, for example, Bella and Maya. Like many kids, when they needed new trainers, they decided on the ones they wanted by seeing what other kids were wearing on TikTok. They were watching their favorite YouTube channels on their smart TV, and of course, also going by what their friends were wearing as well. So they decided they wanted these new colourful Adidas Gazelles, but it wasn't just a linear journey to purchase. Once they'd been inspired and they decided which trainers they wanted, first of all, it involved having a look at them on the Adidas website, on an iPad, a quick Google to see who else sold them and for the best price. My wife then ordered them on multiple sizes via the Next app into their local store where they could try them on. But then they didn't have the right colour combinations and the right sizes. So we actually ended up ordering a pair of trainers on my desktop on a completely different store and delivered to our door. So just like my daughter's trainer journey, every purchase is unique. It's rarely a simple, direct line. Understanding these varied paths, these individual touch points, is essential for driving effective marketing. It's about starting with your customer, understanding their journey, and then working backwards to identify patterns and insights. And you can't just do this once, you need to do it constantly in real time. You're always adapting and meeting them on whatever channel they're on their terms. Measurement also plays a crucial role in connecting audience behavior to marketing efforts. So by measuring the impact of each strategy, marketers can effectively connect the dots between audience needs, behavior, and marketing effectiveness. We often find that starting at the top of the funnel with brand awareness is incredibly impactful. In fact, consistently, we see clients achieve, on average, 2.6 times more conversions when they execute an omni-channel strategy that combines both brand and performance campaigns. And with direct response campaigns, they're obviously essential for driving immediate sales. It's vital to understand how the top of funnel branding efforts are ultimately influencing and enhancing those sales. Far too often, brand and performance campaigns are planned in silos, sometimes by completely different teams. However, the ideal scenario is that you have a holistic view and you can understand how brand campaigns are actually impacting that performance activity. So this report here, this is just one of the many sort of valuable reports in the Quantcast platform. It helps you do exactly that. It measures the overlap of audiences between brand and DR initiatives and shows you the conversion rate for each. And this allows you to see the whole picture. We've also got a channel mix report, and that highlights which combinations of channels are actually providing also the highest conversion rate. So this really helps our clients identify where best to optimize their budgets. And remember, for a customer to make a purchase, they typically go through a journey. Each phase is crucial. By using measurement tools like these, we can understand where our audience is in the journey and effectively move them along the funnel, from initial awareness all the way down to, hopefully, loyal customers. Conducting brand list surveys as well in real time, this can also provide really actionable insights. So the Quantcast platform, we've built into it a brand lift study which can be activated across multiple channels at the same time. And that means we can adapt things like frequency and device, messaging, the creative formats to really reach those most receptive to the brand. So if we take Kapali Rum as an example, it's really interesting in how the targeting and messaging can really make or break a campaign. So Kapali, they donate money to plant trees with every purchase, but they faced a really common challenge. They had no clear idea of who their target audience was and what their tagline should be as well. So our initial analysis was actually surprising. When we first ran the campaign alongside the brand lift study, we actually saw an overall negative 7% awareness lift. But then when we dug into the data, we found a silver lining. It was males aged 21 to 49 that were actually driving a positive 7% lift in awareness, while other audiences were seeing a decrease. So this insight led us to test various different taglines amongst these different audiences. And what's fascinating is how much a single change in a tagline can shift the lift amongst these audiences. If we look at the numbers, we actually saw a massive 37% awareness lift with females, aged 21 to across all education levels. And we saw a massive 31% lift with males and females, 45 plus parents with degrees, and various different levels of awareness across different demographics. So this case study really highlights two critical things. First, initial campaign results might not tell the whole story. You need to deep dive into the data. And then secondly, something as seemingly as small as a tagline tweak can have a really dramatic impact on different audiences. It's about testing, learning, and then optimizing your approach based on who you're really reaching. So, just to recap what we've discussed about building an effective omnichannel strategy. First, it's absolutely critical that you reach your audiences wherever they are, and that means across all devices. Second, you need to understand where your audience is in their journey, whether that's initial awareness, active consideration, or ready to take action. Delivering the right message at the most relevant time is paramount. And then third, and this is crucial, you have to measure effectiveness differently at each customer touchpoint. What works at the awareness stage may not work for conversion, and vice versa. In-campaign optimizations are essential. So at Quantcast, we've built a platform to address these exact needs. The platform allows you to plan, activate, and measure all in one place. This enables us to deliver a really unified journey and comprehensive measurement for all of our advertised partners. Ultimately, an effective omnichannel strategy is about meeting your customers wherever they are, when they're ready, and with the right message, all backed by continuous measurement and optimization. So I hope you found that insightful. We're going to be demoing the platform straight after this session, so if you want to pop by our stand, it's just outside the door. But I'm really excited to hand you over to my colleague, Ellie, who's going to be doing a Q&A with David from BYD and Brendan from PMG.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellie, Head of Client Strategy at Quantcast, and I'm joined by Dave, who I think everyone knows already, and Brendan, who is from PMG, the BYD agency. So BYD has obviously enjoyed phenomenal brand growth over the last couple of years in terms of brand recognition, but also sales. So following on from Alex's deep dive into omnichannel, we wanted to understand how your channel selection has maybe influenced that. So Dave, starting with you, can you just share an overview of which channels you're actually using and how that has evolved over time?
Yeah, sure. So car manufacturers traditionally always want to show you a picture of the car as much as possible. So, and we're obsessed with TV. So that's kind of our first channel, and then we build around that, especially if we're launching a car. Kind of every sales director will want it on TV. We're in digital out of home. We do use radio, mainly for sales events, so that seems to work well. All social, all digital, fairly decent budget, so we're pretty much everywhere. I think how it's evolved over time probably hasn't changed as much as, like, there's been a lot of changes in the industry, but actually how the overall channel mix has changed probably isn't as huge as you might think. Platforms have come along like TikTok, like, can't really not be on there now, to be honest. The amount of eyeballs they have, the amount of video that's consumed on that platform, so that takes a portion of budget that has to come from somewhere else. TV's so expensive, I think that kind of dictates your campaign, right? There's like a minimum entry price to get into TV, and then we build around that. From a omnichannel point of view, I think we try and have just a really clear view of our key KPIs, and we're trying to simplify that now as well. So when I was at Stellantis, we had many lower funnel digital KPIs, and it was quite hard work, but the brands never grew. Or when you're growing a brand, it's slightly different. So I kind of mentioned it earlier, share of search is massive for us. Might not work for every industry, but in cars, if you plot like the share of search in Google over the last 10 years and map it to share of market, the correlation is super tight. So once we'd identified that, that's something that we look at. Other manufacturers do also look at. So that share of voice, share of search metric. If you're a consumer good, if you're toothpaste or deodorant, that's probably not something you can do, but you need to be really clear in your KPIs and what works for your business. And then we try and do like incrementality testing, etc., as Claire was here earlier was mentioning, to understand how that might lift. So example we did with the PMG team was we had a model where we had nothing else running really other than search, and we ran display on that model, and we saw search uplift. You know, the volumes of search for that model were 2-3 times what they were before from running only display was the only thing we'd added. So that kind of shows you that, you know, on a last click lead basis, which is what automotive love to look at, display will never pan out, but actually in terms of pushing up the search volumes, that really works well.
I guess that opportunity doesn't come along very often where you're not running many other channels, so that was a good one to turn on and off and see the effect. Brendan, how, from the agency's point of view, how are you thinking about channels and testing as well and measuring success?
Yeah, I'd say working on BYD and kind of with Dave and the team, it all comes down to levers, like where we are in the year, like what's launching, like are we kind of behind targets in terms of the cars being sold, and kind of like the programmatic strategy really kind of like works around that, kind of like it's always on, but kind of upweighting the awareness tactics when, you know, something new is launching, or if we're really in a push for driving leads, we kind of like push down the funnel. And we've also put a lot of effort into understanding that path to conversion, kind of like Alex spoke about in the presentation, where like if we just go off last click, you'd probably turn off some of the programmatic channels, like you'd run search and social, but we know kind of like the path to buying a car isn't that simple, like those touch points and kind of going on to then submit a test drive request or something like that. It's quite complicated, there's different touch points, so we've done a lot of analysis around that to understand where display, OLV, OTT and those kind of come into that journey to conversion.
Mm-hmm. Dave, have you ever come into a difficult conversation with finance in terms of like channels not performing, or because everything's going so well it hasn't come up yet?
Every conversation I have with finance seems to be difficult. They're coming from, I always want to spend more and they don't. So I think maybe more sales directors, quite a big role in automotive, or senior marketing people who are just like KPI'd on how many leads you drive. I'm sure all businesses have that, you have targets. And often it's easier to be like, right, I've delivered 10,000 retail lead tenders this month and 60% of them came from social, so put more money into social. But it's what caused them to click, you know, that's the last movement that they've made. And that's great that was the last thing they clicked on. I mean, if you only went down that route, you could spend millions in search, right? And that could be a bottomless pit of defending every single brand term that you've ever got. So I think definitely some tough conversations. I think sticking to having those clear KPIs is where I can go back to them and be like, well, hang on a minute, but we've also got this search uplift that we can prove to you that we've got here. Has helped us. We've definitely had more success at BYD in terms of, or I have, in terms of not just going off that deep end of like programmatic, doesn't work, search social, and hammer out probably quite low quality leads, whereas I guess coming in at BYD had a bit more of a chance to educate, because we were such at the beginning of the journey. But yeah, those conversations do happen still regularly, and I probably, you know, if leads start dropping, I'm sure I'll have to have that conversation again.
Yeah. How did you get to, you mentioned your share of search as like maybe an interim metric that you can use to allay any fears if you've shown that correlation. Was it quite easy to get to that as another metric?
I guess it's easier in our industry. I can't say for others. You might have other things. We did quite a big piece of work. It actually stemmed from looking at share of voice versus share of market to try and get more budget when I was at Stellantis, because we were spending less than competitors but trying to still hold quite a large market share. So we plotted that and then realised that actually share of search kind of came quite similar. So we actually have a Google dashboard at BYD that's updated daily I can log into and check that. And I do now get KPI'd on it, which is fine because I think it's a more relevant metric. But yeah, we got a bit lucky in terms of the way we searched it, but I think it was just stripping the business back down to basics and trying to understand the end goal and how customers shop. And that's how we came to it. So I'm sure there'll be alternatives in other areas. Maybe web traffic's obviously, you know, quite one that you can use.
Yeah, thank you. And Brendan, from an agency, maybe from a different brand perspective, are there any other examples of how you're convincing brands to spend in more upper funnel metrics or programmatic, which isn't always successful on a last click?
Yeah, definitely. I think like with kind of like we were speaking about before, kind of like the journey to conversion for every client is completely different. You know, what we measure for like a BYD is completely different to when we're looking at like an e-com brand. MMM is something we've looked at. I think with like BYD, you know, hasn't been around for too long, so we just don't have the data. But something like that is something that's quite popular and kind of like works for other clients. But I think, you know, you need to pivot depending on what you have and kind of like what's measurable, and also consider like that journey to conversion is different.
Great. Thank you so much, both, for your insights into omnichannel. So I think, in summary, it's about testing all channels, using the metrics that you have available to you, and investing at all stages. So thanks, everyone.